sitting with other people. So recently you've done 5 beautiful works. Okay, so I get to sit with you now.
Yes,
You've
you
been
do.
sitting with other people.
I can't wait.
And I'm so excited. You've been having conversations for the last 5 to 8 weeks. And it's exciting to now sit with you and begin to ask you certain questions that I believe that the world needs to hear answers to. At this time, we're fine. Hello, everyone. My name is Adeshawa Greg Igodaru, and I'm the host of this conversation. Sitting here with me is Christopher Ehinomen Omoejade. Okay, so recently you've done 5 beautiful works centered around leadership, relationship, and financial freedom. And I want us to just talk through this. My first question, what stage did you get to, and what was the thing that caused you to begin to pursue intentional understanding of the purpose, the power, and the process of leadership?
The purpose, the power,
And the process
of leadership.
So
That's
my
a powerful
question,
word.
yeah.
Now,
What was the thing that made
I'm
you?
used to just being on this other side where I ask loads of questions, and but now you're gonna put me
On my hot seat.
Put me. Okay, let me explain.
Yeah.
I think the entire trajectory of my life has been primed in such a way, has been divinely orchestrated in such a way that even when I was oblivious of the fact, I was on the journey of leadership. The earliest memories I have of leadership will probably be maybe even at primary school, moving on to secondary school, occupying different positions of leadership, still not understanding why, going on to the university, both in social and in academic settings, occupying leadership positions, metamorphosing into the real world, as it were, and finding myself in different positions where people call on you to say, we want you to lead. I think it took a couple of years ago for me to now come to the full realization that it's been a full circle. I remember taking up a communal position of where I reside, and in taking that position up, I had prayed and asked God why, and I was just go ahead and do it. So for me, I think the purpose is still unfolding. I don't think I've reached the final full stop. It's definitely still unfolding. And the entire spectrum of leadership for me is still evolving. But I can say that if I look behind, then it adds up. I can now understand why I was leading at that time. What lessons did I learn from there? How can I impact my world? How can I impact other people with leadership? What am I doing right now? What do I propose to do in the near future that would impact others? I think that would be a rough way for me to put it.
So if I hear you well, what you're saying is it was something that was first stumbled on before it became an intentional journey.
Yes, I think for all human beings, we always all stumble first before intentionality steps in. Hardly before you find anyone walk into a room and have a eureka moment and say, this is it. Oftentimes, Steve Jobs says the dots only connect looking back. So even with the leadership journey, they only connect when you look back. So yes, there was that initial stumble, but beyond that, I think there was also something inside, a force of some sort. I think Miles Monroe would call it the spirit of leadership. There is something as such that's called the spirit of leadership that pulls you. So my spouse would tease me and say she knows that if we're in a room of 50 people and things are not going accordingly, and they say we need somebody, the odds that, are stacked that my hands will go up. So those you can't explain. It's something that just comes natural, that you want to step into a mode, not for self-aggrandizement, but literally to see things work and see people get to a destination.
Awesome. If we look through the story of many leaders today, we hear things like a pain that becomes their motivation to stand in certain places and do certain things. if I hear you correctly, what I also hear is that leadership is not just a title, it's a positioning. But my question is there a pain story of leadership that has sustained you or drives you on this journey?
I think we all, at some point in our lives, would have those, we'll get on pain avenue, as I would like to term it, where things tend to change and your focus tends to shift. It may be a story of lack and where you have to rise up and say, it may be a story of fulfillment. I think my own personal leadership journey oftentimes have been functions of seeing a lacuna where I have noticed that things are not going according the way they should. And there's that pull saying there can be more. I can do more. I can change the story and the narrative. In my own life, because I mean, you didn't send me any of these questions before. So I'm drawing from the inner depths of my soul right now to answer you. But if I look at my story, every position that I think I've occupied has come from a place of just knowing that people are not content or are not satisfied and somebody needs to rise. I know it might sound like a Marvel comic where Superman or Batman appears on the scene and saves the day, but in truth, that's what leadership really is, stepping into that mode when people are in pain. So if you read comics, you know that it was every time there was pain that the superhero appears. So for me, at every point in time where I would have sensed some form of pain, it might not have been physical pain, it might not have been emotional pain, it might just have been the pain of knowing fully well that people are dissatisfied with the status quo and they want more. I think those times and times that something triggered inside of me, and I just felt that, you know what, I know I possess, by the grace of God, some abilities to be able to fill that gap or fill that void and make the difference.
Okay, so my next question, what does true leadership look like in an evolving world where there are valid reasons to look out for yourself alone?
I know you're going to still probably come back and ask me questions about the new books, but I spoke extensively on leaders who are self-servant leaders, those who put self before others, those who eat last, those who turn up when nobody else is turning up, those who don't seek glory, who don't seek praise, and who still go ahead and do what needs to be done. That is the picture of leadership. Unfortunately, like you said, today's world, the media, everything else that we see around us has created a false narrative around what leadership is. It's become selfish. It's become self-seeking. It's become a case of people stealing from the commonwealth. It's become a case of people literally seeing others suffer at their expense and not caring about it. For me, anyone who calls himself a leader must first understand that it's a greater call to service. It's a greater call to ascension. And with ascension comes great sacrifice. Nobody ascends on the platform of nothingness. You ascend on the platform of sacrifice, knowing fully well that I'm going to give myself my time, possibly even my resources, just so that others can get by. And I might not get anything back in return. For me, that is the picture of leadership, not what the 21st century media may want to present or portray to people. You know, oftentimes when I see some particular leaders, and maybe your questions might drive me to pick up a few examples, I don't know. But when I see some particular leaders, I mean, there's some leaders that give me so much joy, and there are other leaders that you just put your hand in your head and think to yourself, what are you thinking? But I feel that we've been called to, change that narrative and really just challenge people to be better.
What's the healthy balance? What's the healthy balance between I'm a leader, because you brilliantly explained what is going on. I'm a leader, I put myself last, I eat last, I clear the tables, and demeaning self. What's the healthy balance between I'm in front, but not in front? I'm in front, but I don't want to put myself in front. Because I think that it's easy to slip out of self-presence, what I think is humility, which is understanding who you really are, stepping into that place, and not just, pushing yourself aside because you're a leader. Because there might be people who are struggling with this leadership thing, whether they got in as a promotion or they got in because they had to step up. How do I become a leader without losing myself? That's the question.
I think the first thing, and if memory does serve me right, and my publishers do permit, I think the very first chapter of my book, So You Want to Lead, I speak to self-leadership. Unfortunately, one of the things we're trying to do is drive a conversation that makes individuals understand that there is not a better moment than now to prepare yourself for leadership. Because oftentimes it comes unannounced. It can come, like you said, in religious circles, at work, in community, in family. But self-leadership is the very first step. You need to have an introspective look into yourself of your personal DNA, of who you are. Because in understanding who you are, in understanding your emotional makeup, your attributes, your characteristics, it's a lot easier now for you to create a very healthy balance of ensuring that when you extend yourself, you don't have people trampling over you. At the same time, it helps you create a very healthy balance as such that when you do start to lead, you don't get so absorbed. Oftentimes, some people would say that there are spirits that surround leadership thrones, that people tend to forget themselves when they sit on the throne. And I may say so that it is very possible. You may have the best intentions, come from the most humble backgrounds. In fact, you might even come from grass, suffer the people. We've seen stories like that all around politics, all around us. And you're saying up to this zenith. But when you get there, it's almost like you forgot where you were coming from. Most leaders who find themselves in that position are leaders who really did not exercise the function of self-discovery. I mean, most of the holy books, the Bible, Quran, speak extensively about you knowing yourself and building walls around yourself. Those are the defenses that would help you along the journey. One of my favorite characters was the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. I mean, he was a Stoic. I mean, people have their reservations, but I was so impressed when I did my research and found out how he consciously prepared himself. Consciously, Benjamin Franklin, former US president, sits on the US dollar bill. They understood that leadership was calling sooner or later, and if they didn't put some certain checks and balances, it's going to submerge you. So a true leader starts at the point of knowing that even before that call is made, even before that clarion announcement is made, who am I? What triggers me? What doesn't trigger me? What makes me extremely happy? What challenges me? What depletes me? Asking yourself these honest questions, I tell you, then you're on the right path, because then you can be able to,
Navigate
the storms.
Yes, so there's a word you've been using, ascension. Ascension. And with your answer now, I'm saying to myself, there might be people who begin this self-discovery journey and then get into leadership or intentional leadership or becoming the eye of the people and forget that self-discovery is a journey. So when you lead, maybe you're on level 1 and you get to level 2. Let's say there's between level 1 to level 5. What does self-discovery look like on each of these levels?
I think it's gonna differ from person to person based on the scope of your leadership and where you're called to lead. So a leader in a religious setting, a leader in a political setting, a leader in an academic setting, wherever, variants of leadership you're expressing, it's gonna differ. But you will find out that at every level, it's almost like a video game. I got two amazing kids. If you're playing a video game, you find out that every level will challenge you. So the video games start off very easy. Level 1 is always the easiest part. But when you move on to level 2, then you find out that it starts training you a little bit more, goes on to level 3. That's kind of the way leadership is. The word ascension, and why I'm using it, it's a continuous thing. You're not just going to all the way. It's going to be a gradual step. And every time you make a step, you find out that each step is going to challenge you a lot more. And that's why you must always, as a leader, find a way to retreat back and ask yourself, what are the demands of this level? What is this level? I mean, we live in a country where there are three tiers of government, and you find out that even with different kinds, each position is going to demand a lot more. So a local government chairman is going to obviously not, his office will not be compared to that of a governor, would not be compared to that of the president or the commander in chief. Each level would demand that. But I would always give reference to something I learned about. I mean, I love history. I found out that history leaves so many clues and patterns. So you don't need to repeat mistakes. You can learn from other people's mistakes. The Romans, every time they went out to war and they would conquer huge swaths of new territories, they always made this very grand procession where nobles are packed in the Colosseum, people are packed on the street throwing flowers. The leading general is marching in, his troops are marching in, celebration, you know. But there was a time I was watching a movie once, and I noticed a very strange scene that made me dig in more. While some scholars may deny whether it was a statement of fact or fiction, for me, it still sold the story. So what was happening then was that the Roman general, whilst in his chariots, listening to the odds of people shouting, Pax Romania, long live Caesar, long live Caesar, there would be a man standing right behind the general in the chariot, holding a wreath. So, you know, the ancient gold wreath over his head. And the only thing, Shewa, you'll be saying is, remember, you are only but human. Remember, you are only but human. Remember. And when you think about that alone, this man is listening to millions. You know, you can imagine the ego, the build, saying to yourself, you are the conqueror, you are this, you are Caesar. And there's a man there reminding you, you are only but human.
And that's like an inner, I mean, we may not have that arrangement.
Yes.
We may not have that
Chariots.
protocol around us. But for every leader, that becomes an inner
Yes.
voice,
Yes.
an inner reminder.
Yes.
But now that you spoke to that, I think it's interesting, and I want to ask, is it important to put people around you who will stand as that guy?
Oh, yes. That means is another principle that is in one of the books that speaks to leadership. I found out that the wisest leaders are the ones who surround themselves with men who are able to sit up, honestly, respectfully defer. Unfortunately, what we found out is that sycophants and a lot of yes men surround a lot of leaders, and it's usually the downfall. In the book, So You Want to Lead, I think I spoke to the former Libyan president, Gaddafi, doing the research, doing the Arab Spring that led to the fall of many of the Arab nations, also Libya, whilst the Benghazi and cities were falling, he didn't believe it. His advisors were telling him that it's just propaganda. But he was coming to you and you're thinking to yourself, oh, it's just propaganda. Your enemies are at work. They are this. You just don't want it. Just a small community will crush them. And that really is a downfall for a lot of leaders. When you surround yourself with people who can, I use the word respectfully because I'm a firm believer in the respect of the seat at all times. The man will come and go, the seat must always be protected, which one of the reasons why I love the US presidency, because the seat must always be protected. It has nothing to do with the individual. But another example was Abraham Lincoln, former US president. He went to court one day, and in court, he was called by the opposing lawyer a tall giraffe with ape-long hands, because Honest Abe, as he was known, was a very tall man. And this lawyer was called Stanton, and he said he didn't want to have anything to do with him. He put him off, wrote him off. I'm thinking here to myself, somebody puts me down like that, and I become US president, off with your head.
He's gone.
Off with your head. But guess what Honest Abe did? When he was putting together his cabinet, he appointed Stanton as one of his top advisors. The same man who, because he said in that courtroom that day, I had so much brilliance, I had eloquence that challenged me to be better. I need this man around me. This man will tell me the truth. So you see the departure between leaders who last and those who don't. Those who last are those who have people around them Leaders who have, for instance, in my present communion position, I have a vice who tells me the truth. There is nothing that's going to not trust me. And I realized that if I was going to succeed in that role, I needed to have somebody who's always, even when my head is in the clouds and my feet are on the ground, it's going to draw me back to earth because that's where the people are. So when I'm floating off, it will remind me and call me and say, you know what, Chris, I don't think I agree with this. And he does it in the most subtle, most diplomatic way. And reason sets in. So the odds of my failing, and I found out that anytime I have failed in some regards, it's because I didn't listen to him. So leaders that want to last, leaders that want to grow, and leaders who want to have lasting legacies are leaders who surround themselves with people who will honestly tell them the truth. Elizabeth I, the Elizabethan age was named after her. A lot of people do not know her that much. We're all used to Queen Elizabeth II, but the name, the Elizabeth age, was gotten from her. She was known as a king and queen in one. This is a young girl who suffered imprisonment, suffered bad health. She became queen in an era where women did not have a voice. And she was ruling over an empire that the sun never set. But there was something that really struck me about that. There's something called the Privy Council. These are the council members that the king or the monarch or the sovereign appoint people to advise. She made sure she surrounded herself with the best of the best of the best. People who would always tell her, Your Majesty, we don't agree. I mean, that was almost an abomination because monarchs of yesteryears held so much power.
Yeah.
You couldn't tell them no.
Yeah.
But yet, the smart and the wise ones understand that no is what will keep you.
Brilliant. Okay, so building and forming relationships. And the reason I took us through those conversations is because you've written 3 books on leadership and even more. Just these 3 are part of the 5 that you're releasing. And so I feel it was really important for us to go that deep. Before I go to the next question, let me ask this. From what you said, it's obvious it's an intentional construct of your circle. But what's the ratio? If you have 10 people who should be working with you as a leader, what's the ratio of the guys who call you bluff to the guys who just, say yes to you?
Okay, so from experience, I realized that intentional leaders, one of the intentionality behind a good leader is replicating yourself in others. So leaders who are conscious about replicating themselves, sooner or later you might not win over everybody. In fact, I make this point. It doesn't matter how brilliant, how skillful, how well-versed, how well-experienced you are. It is humanly impossible for everybody, because it's just human nature, to agree and align with you. So whether it's political, whatever way, there's always going to be somebody that's going to call your bluff and tell you no. So you need to develop some form of mechanism on those kind of people. But it is your duty as a leader that you win over the majority. It is your duty. And you can always do that through tools of honesty. Because as much as we tend to demonize followers, those who are being led, the honest truth is that, respectfully, they would always follow those that they can trust.
Yeah.
They would follow those who are vulnerable to them. They will follow those who honestly have their best interest at heart.
Authentic.
I mean, if you look at the Bible, for instance, even after King Solomon had passed away and his son had taken over, I think Rehoboam had taken over the throne, you find out that when the people came to complain about taxes and said to him, your father dealt with us this way, we're ready to serve you and this. Unfortunately, which goes back to your previous question, the people he had around him. He had this, told them, oh, come on, what do they mean by that? Let them suffer. Come on, this. So he had told them, go and come back in a certain number of days. And they came back and said, okay, great king,
What's the verdict?
What is the verdict? And he says to them, if my father used this, mine would be like a scorpion's tail. And he preached hardship. And then the famous lines came, every man to his tent, O ye Israel. That's what happens when leaders are detached and leaders are not, leaders don't show themselves to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is a key thing. I know sometimes it could be misinterpreted, but when people understand that you are one of them. One of my favorite leaders was the former Indian leader Gandhi. You see, when you bring yourself to a certain level, you find when he did the salt march, when the British wanted to impose a salt tax, and he marched all the way non-violent, you could see people were coming out from their villages and their towns, understanding that this person understands my pain. So the honest truth is that for a leader who's intentional, it's not very difficult to win people over. If you do what needs to be done, you can be honest with them, you can be vulnerable with them. Out of 10, you probably would have 7 on your side. Leave the other 3 to do what they do. You actually need a thorn in your back sometimes.
Not that I disagree, but if we win people over, there's a tendency that they become yes men. And that's what we're trying to avoid.
One of the best leaders, in my opinion, that this country ever had was President Yar'Adua.
You should have asked me, I would have said it.
Yeah, and he won me over when I read, I think, a political biography or story somewhere about how, I mean, the office of the president of Nigeria is such a powerful office.
Yeah.
It is so powerful.
Yes, it is.
You literally can do and undo.
Yeah.
But that man understanding the allure of power and its seductive tangles, one of the things he did was he had a friend who was a professor in one of the universities, and that man never asked him for anything, never made requests, never said, oh, my son needs a job, my daughter needs a house, I have this problem. So it's always good, even as a leader, for you to put people in different compartments. So he did that so well that he would get this professor, when he had a naughty issue, to come to meet him in the villa. Guess what? This professor would insist on paying for his own trip. It was never on the president's bill. Pay for his trips, not stay in the villa, stay in a hotel. They would sit down and they would talk.
Yeah.
Now, it is wise for every leader to have that kind of man or woman. Somebody who would be unbridled in telling you the facts and the truth. And you must be strong enough to absorb what comes with it.
Yeah.
So I feel that as a leader, it's good for you to have people in compartments. That way you're able to know who to call on and draw on and
what?
you can weigh them on scales, their opinions, knowing fully well who's expecting something and who's not.
So it means that as a leader, in putting people around you, you also have to put into considerations those have been in your life.
Oh, yes.
Because I know that there's a thing where you get into leadership and then you forget and then you're going with the flow with the people that are also there with you. But
I think it's a balance. A first set of eyes from the outside, those who have been in experience, those who have been in power, who have been around the, I mean, there's a certain level of stability they offer you when you step into leadership. I've gone into leadership positions where I had to maintain the status quo for a given period of time, which one of the reasons why I kind of frown at when people take up positions and the first thing they want to do is a clean sweep. You can do that, but it's wise enough for you.
It's a wiser way
to go about it and allow, everything settled up before you make, because you learn a lot from those who have sat in position. But it's always very instructive that you bring those who obviously you can trust their judgment, not those who we tend to abuse the office that you occupy, but those who genuinely can be able to, have your ears and say to you, sometimes I say this when I open the newspaper, and I say this for myself respectfully and humbly, when I see some political leaders acting some way, the first question I ask is, please, where are their kids? Because I have a father that I respect so much, but I will tell him some things. I will, if he's sitting in a position, I will tell him some things. I'm like, dude, you're going to die soon. I'll be stuck, left to leave out this legacy of the name that I'm bearing. These people are suffering. This is the narrative on the street. Forget what these advisors and special senior advisors are telling you. I'm telling you the reality of what's going on the streets of Twitter and X. That's where you feel the pulse of the average generational Gen Z who will tell you as it's,
Yeah.
But oftentimes leaders tend to, because there's a bubble that surrounds leadership. There's a bubble. And once you get in and nobody can pierce it, it becomes a problem.
All right, so let's go to the gatekeepers. Building and nurturing relationships are powerful. They're a powerful gateway to arriving at your flourishing life. I mean, we just talked about leadership, people around you, and all of that. And I know that you're a people person.
Am I?
I know that you're so. You tend to connect with people really easily. I think it's a gift. I don't think everybody has that gift. But there's something I want to ask. How does one navigate hurts, betrayals, and grief or loss when we are navigating these relationships? Yeah.
Tight one.
Yeah, because I mean, it's the reality. When you're dealing with people, you're going to get hurt.
Yeah.
They're going to stab you in the back.
Okay. So I think it goes back to our emotional construct. So, like you know, I teach on emotional intelligence. And one of the 4 cardinal principles that hold up emotional intelligence is self-awareness. We tend to really belittle the strength and power of self-awareness because when you know yourself and you know what can hurt you, you can avoid it. You can navigate around it. Nothing comes as a surprise. So oftentimes when you find people get really hurt and say, oh, I wasn't expecting that. No.
You were not present.
You were not present because it comes with the territory. So gatekeepers, let me first start that as a basis. So gatekeepers, I use the term gatekeeper. I saw somebody use the term access control yesterday on the same subject matter. These are people who stand before other individuals, systems or structures, and like you rightfully pointed out, they are the ones responsible whether you gain access or not.
Right.
And it also boils down to human relationship. The first time I think I give it further thoughts and realized respectfully and with all humility when you said there was a gift I needed to pen my lessons was I was in Abuja once attending a school of ministry and somebody literally walked up to me and told me, I would love if you, I know you've written a book, if you can write on how you do this thing. Because I noticed that you are friends here, you this one, that one, I want to understand that. And then I now kind of came to the realization that what I had taken for granted up to that point that came naturally was a struggle for people. People do not understand how powerful relationships are. People do not understand how they can build up some certain skill sets to be able to go around men regardless of their station in life, whether they are small, whether they are mighty. People do not understand that there is an art and a science to relationship, that it's not just about winning relationships, it's also about keeping relationships. You know, in other words, about oiling the relationship. People will tell you, I know this person, I have his number. I know, I ask you, I say, no, you only just know the person. It's not a relationship. So that was the back end of the book. But now to answer your question, I think it's very important that individuals take out time to be able to break down themselves. When you do that, you can now present yourself to the world in such a way that you don't get hurt. So for instance, one of the lines that I use quite often when people ask me, oh, why are you so bold to walk up to this person and say hello? I would always tease and say, because there are only 2 options. Yes
Or no.
or no. So I have built my brain muscles to accept that reality. And my brain can live with the 2 options. The reason why people struggle and get hurt or is because they've not exposed their minds to
muscles, yeah.
the negatives. You only just want to have a flowery garden, ooh, la 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 la.
La La Land.
You know, la la la. Life is not la la la. The life is real. So you need to toughen up yourself to be able to say, what happens when I get a sucker punch? What happens when the door gets slammed on my face? What happens when somebody says no? What happens when somebody says nothing good will ever come out of you? What happens? How do you build yourself and stand up? There's some people, because words are so powerful.
Exactly.
So I think one of the things that I've tried to do in all my life is expose myself to everything. Some of the toughest conditions are what presents some of the best champions we have. You will see an Usain Bolt run on sand on the beach to prepare for a 10-second dash 100 meters. The problem about a lot of us is that we try to circumvent the necessary difficult trainings that come with avoiding hurt. It's better for you to face it, get hurt, get beaten, get bruised, and stand up and now say, okay, when next is coming to you, so no, I recognize that.
Yeah.
That is bruise coming. I can undo you. So I think that will be the best way that I put it.
I think if we're going to go further in this, we'll be having like maybe a therapy traumatic session. Because what you've just outlined is a big deal. I mean, I know people who, when they hear no or when they hear nothing is going to come out of you, it becomes a very traumatic experience, and they can sense the triggers. They can sense. So once they begin to sense, they pull back, they withdraw. And I've seen that's not effective, because by the time you're withdrawing, you don't become that person that you're meant to be. But I want to ask, introvert or extrovert?
Both.
You can't say both. Because the reason I ask is because somebody would say, oh, he's an extrovert, that's why it's easy for him.
Both. So I kind of think that my life is so well evenly balanced that I remember teasing my wife a few months ago that I miss living in London when I was in school, because I had an apartment where I lived alone. This is alone. I would stay indoors, other Chinese.
I think people don't know the power behind, loving you.
Loving you.
Yourself.
I love my space. I love my TV. I love my books. I love just the nothingness and the silence. Yeah, and I still do it till today. I take retreats where I step out of the mode. I step out of the construct that the world wants to force on me sometimes. And I go into that retreat mode, which is one of the very powerful things that leaders do as well. They find time to be able to. In the US, you have the presidential Camp David. The reason why it was set up is supposed to be a retreat center. In Nigeria, you have some amazing spaces, and it's for you to find one that works for you. So I can be very introverted, because it's in that being introverted that I tend to onboarding my mind. I tend to do more writing. I tend to do more reflections. I tend to do more planning of where I am and where I'm going to. But on the extroverted end is drop me anywhere.
And I'm good.
I don't care what, I am super good. So whilst a lot of people may not be able to have the luxury of owning those two extreme ends, I would say it's very important that you have a little bit of both, and you can build on it, you can work on it. And oftentimes the only way you can get a muscle is to hit the gym. So the only way you can obviously get better at it is to
get on the field,
get on the field, go out on a date, do that. You would gradually build yourself into it. And on the other end, the only way you can do it is sometimes just switch off your phone and stay indoors.
Nobody's going to die.
Nobody's going to die. The world is still going to keep on spinning. Pick up a book and read. You find out that you would understand that there is power in self. There's power in the solitude. Because I found out that it's in that solitude that you can meditate. It's in that solitude you can make sense of where your life is going. It's in that solitude you can ask deep-rooted questions and give yourself sincere answers that is not influenced by anybody or anything else.
What's the demon of a relational life?
So relational life, what part of
we started from the gatekeeper thing.
Yeah.
And then you spoke to us about, I can talk to anybody, I can speak to. What's the demon of being that person that can reach out to anybody, ask for anything?
You probably would sometimes unknowingly cross lines. Sometimes the colors become blurred. And you wouldn't notice it. So one of the benefits of being an introverted person, for instance, is that you have the luxury of always looking at things from a certain, like we have some amazing cameras looking at us now, from a certain lens. It makes you be able to specifically frame things, frame situations, frame people, because naturally you're to yourself. So it's almost like asking a fish why it's wet. Because once you're an extroverted person, you're sometimes become so absorbed that you may not realize that you are not making the kind of impact. You are stepping on toes. You are like, for instance, my wife says one of the greatest drawbacks, as it were, I enjoy asking for favors. Now I have a wife who doesn't.
Okay, we're interviewing you.
My wife lives her life accrued by that way that if she can, she would not ask. On the flip side, I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask. I'm going to ask. But you find out that the drawback or the demon, as you said, to that is that sometimes you would end up making mistakes, having errors, hurting yourself and hurting people, expectations being dashed. You know, sometimes my wife will say, you see, if you did not, and then you now realize, oh, it's true. We already asked. You know, so I guess that would be the drawback for me. That would be the drawback.
Okay, awesome. So I can actually categorically say you're more extroverted than introverted.
Okay.
Let's talk about financial freedom.
Oh, yes. Can we skip this part?
No. So we've been working together for a bit now,
Yes,
and
I've enjoyed it.
you're welcome.
Did we have our first fight yesterday?
Oh yeah, we will always. There are many more fights to come. So
Okay.
let's talk about financial freedom. And the reason I want us to talk to men. And the reason is because I know that you have a special call to men. That's why. We'll get to one part, we'll talk about women, but I want us to talk to men. As a man who has demands, there are demands on you, whether it's from your family as a single man or your family as a married man. I see men sometimes and I think that they are fighting for their lives. How do you balance or fight to live debt-free and still see fullness in the possibilities that are available for you?
Okay, she went there finally. So you're spot on, and maybe I can say this with all honesty and openness that you're very correct that men struggle. It's a real thing. Unfortunately, it's a conversation that society has not encouraged us to have. I remember a few days ago watching the US R&B singer Tyrese crying, and it became a topical issue on the internet because the narrative that I grew up with is that men don't cry. And when it comes to finance, unfortunately, the academic system set up, especially in Black Africa, has failed us because unfortunately, it wasn't part of the curriculum to prepare us for the reality that was to come. My 7-year-old has his club in school that is a financial literacy club. I didn't. Everything I know about finance is what I picked up from influence, from friends, from parents, from everything else. In fact, I remember at the early stage of my marriage, my wife had to correct me on a particular financial habit I had anytime she made demands. I had to take an introspective look and realize that I picked it from my father. My entire years of growing up, anytime my mom had a demand on my father, she had to put it down in writing.
Wow.
My father was the kind of man that, like you said, you can only give what you have.
Yeah.
And that was the best way, I guess he thought he could do it. So any demands I made to my father had to be in writing, even with us as kids. You want to have this, put it down in writing, I'll go through it. Now I got into marriage and I was doing that to my wife, who obviously came from a different setup that she found it weird. I want to do this.
Why do I have to write
Why do
to
I
you?
need to make a shopping list? But I picked it up. It took a while for me to shake that off. So talking financially, men are struggling. Society is not helping. Unfortunately, and I say this with respect, I'm surrounded by amazing women like yourself. A lot of women are also not helping. Not understanding that. I'm supported by women who, even when we talk about the debt part, was there for me and was literally almost a breadwinner. So it is a very deep conversation. And maybe like you rightfully said, that we're also trying to champion amongst men and saying that, you know what, you don't need to sink alone. Let us have these conversations. Let us discuss what our challenges are as men. Where are we lacking in some of these areas? What are the skills that we need to learn? What's the financial education that we skipped? One thing about finances, it doesn't matter if you're 10 or you're 50. It would humble you the same way. Finances don't respect the age when the bills come knocking. And unfortunately, men are struggling because we are now approaching an age where inflation is at an all-time high. Bills are tripling and doubling. The demands of children, education is so much. And a lot of men, income is not growing. What's going to happen? Well, unfortunately, there's always one doorway that opens for most of us, and it's called debt. Because it is the easiest, it is the most alluring, In fact, I like to call it a siren. So the sirens in medieval times were what were known as mami water. In medieval times, they were called the sirens. And what they would do is that when ships were on the high seas, they would sing and serenade. Sailors would hear the songs and become
be trapped.
hypnotized and be trapped.
Yeah.
And the ship will crash into rocks, and that will be the end.
Yeah.
That's what depth is. Depth is like a siren, like a mami water. It will call you in. And because it's so sweet, so sweet, so sweet,
And easy.
most men find themselves drawn in. And that's where drama begins. I don't know if you want me to stop the questions or no. I think you may have questions.
No. It's okay because I mean, these days the other time CBN gave a policy to banks to, give loans out, and we had banks calling and saying, do you need a loan and all of that. And then fintech companies, loans are easy to get these days. So it's easy to get into debt.
Get easier now.
Yeah. It's easy to, so I think it's an important conversation. How does a man, and I'm glad I'm having this conversation with you because, this is real. It's reality. It's experience. How does a man say no to debt? Putting in mind that even in business, you hear today that you should take some money, let your capital be, a debt and all of that.
OPM, what happens money?
Yeah, so how does a man not get himself entrapped?
So I had, during one of the conversations with the CEO, which the videos are on our YouTube channel, I had a very insightful conversation with a financial expert, an amazing friend, Emmanuel Tafa. Coincidentally, I saw him a few days ago at a function where I spoke at. And I revisited the conversation because I asked him the same question. I said, you advise small businesses, you advise organizations, you tell them about assets, you tell them about those debts, the options, either it's a debt or it's equity. You give this beautiful lingo. But can we simplify it within the context of our society as Nigerians?
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, we all grew up with some amazing books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where a lot of these things are glamorized and look so good.
Yeah.
I know, but I'm always quick to remind people that you cannot compare the American credit system with the Nigerian setup. For one, when you are in debt in Nigeria, you are almost branded a criminal. In the US, no. You can file for bankruptcy and rebuild your life. In Nigeria, you have a situation where law enforcement officers have become debt collectors. I know what I went through.
Yeah.
And I'm not in any way holding brief about whether I was so innocent or guilty. I think it was a function of a lot of mistakes, miscalculations, and also a function of errors. It's a combination, it's a potpourri of different things that would land you in debt.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we tend to tell a lot of people this: go off and get a loan, take 500,000 and pay back in this. But the honest truth is that we are operating in an economy where, like everywhere else in the world, where a single policy literally can mess everything up.
Yeah.
And you find yourself drowning. And there are thousands of people probably that will listen to this conversation who are in that position. Loan apps right now have become the biggest scourge and cancer. People literally are owing multiple, you can literally borrow 20, 30 from different loan apps. Talking about millions. We have those who are in school, in university, with no income coming in, apart from allowance from their parents, owing loan apps. Now talk about a man that was married. He has kids. He has rent. He has electricity. He has food. He has fees. He has fuel. He has everything else. If my 7-year-old comes to give me the puppy eyes and tell me I want pizza, the odds I'm going to look for that money to get pizza. And when a man is faced with all of this, it can be overwhelming. Because one thing he does is that he eats into our ego. He eats into, when the Bible speaks to your inability to provide, being an infidel. So you can see all around us, we're surrounded by these goalposts that are telling us that we're not good enough, telling us that we've not done enough, telling us that look at your peers who are doing better, look at these other options. And when people throw those things at us, to be fair to many of them, I don't think they're doing it from a very negative way to bring us down, especially women. I think they're doing it also from an honest place to say, why can my lot not be like this? But the reality is that you're in this post and debt is calling onto you and telling you, you know what? Come, I offer you a succor. I offer you an easy way out. You can sleep well tonight. You can deal with it tomorrow, which is what debt does. You will sleep well that night and wake up to the reality of it tomorrow. When my debt journey began, and it always starts, I wrote about it in the book, You Too Can Be Debt Free. It starts benign. It starts like a cancer. Anybody that knows anything about cancers, you know that it doesn't just blow up in one day. Cancer starts small. So it starts with all 10,000 naira a year. You find out that you're credit worthy. Let me take another 20. Let me take another 50. Let me take another 100. After all, it's just 1 million. What's the distance between? And one of the things, again, that kind of puts men in prison is that the interest start building up. Because why? Every time you take a loan, there's always an interest element to it. And now you think to yourself, how am I going to keep up? Then you graduate to the point where Peter now has to pay Paul. Then God help you if you get to the stage where you can no longer find Peter anymore, then you find out that it has hit the fan. The trouble starts coming. And there's so many disadvantages. I mean, I have people who probably watched videos that were once creditors. You know, I give God the glory. I ain't taking no pride because I've made it. It's been a journey. And I've made it a lifelong decision to make amends to everyone I ever hurt financially. For me, it's a lifelong journey. You must never gloat, even if you paid back. You must never gloat over, after all, I paid you back. No. Every single day I wake up thinking of somebody that possibly must have been hurt by my decisions, actions, or inactions. So those are the kind of drawbacks that debt doesn't tell you. So the husband now can no longer go out. I mean, I had a very good friend who's approached me to kind of chaperone him out of debt. And when his spouse reached out to me a few weeks ago, she was only just getting to know. And one of the, because we men, because of our macho, all provision, we get to this state where we can't even bring our spouses. I couldn't tell my wife for a long time.
Before you go there, I was actually going to come there because I know in the book, in the first pages of the book, you had, told us a story about how this happened.
By the way, shout out to my wife. I love you.
And your wife came to you and she said to you, do I even know you? And my question is, what would you have done differently?
I should have been open. I found out that being vulnerable, being open, you know what, babe, I'm sorry, I don't have. I could want to borrow. And if I have to borrow, we're going to be in this together. We are both in the understanding that I'm taking this and this is how we are going to repay this. But fortunately, we men tend not to do that. The case I was just telling you about, his wife wasn't aware of all the debts. We tend to just, picture ourselves as the alpha male image in our heads. After all, I never saw my father cry with my mother. Why would I cry with my wife? I never saw my father vulnerable up to the point. After all I just saw was, it was done, it was done, it was done. So it should be done, it should be done, it should be done. And one of the things that I wrote about in the book is that a lot of us do not realize that women, for those who are married, are blessed with a sixth sense that we men don't have. You can argue with your keypad. Women have an inherent God-given ability to, it's almost like spider senses. So if you follow Spider-Man, he says his spider senses are tingling. Women have a sense that they see trouble miles before it comes. That was something that I ignored. So oftentimes when God gives you a helper, we always think maybe the help stops in the kitchen or in the bedroom on the bed. The help also helps you to discern, helps you to scan. You want to take money from this person. Your spouse will probably be the first person that will flag what you can't see because you are beclouded by the needs that you can't see. But she has a tendency to look back and say, darling, don't take from this person. She might not be able to even place it in words, what she's feeling. And for me, I think that's one of God's defense mechanisms when it comes to finances that we men ignore. We think to ourselves, oh, your Excel sheet, your word, you spread it out. By the time a woman will sit down and probably tell you and say, it's not adding up.
I think that's also because men think that they're El Shaddai.
Yes, and at the end of the day, they shall die. But I think it's also a societal construct. I keep on going back to that. It's a societal construct. We grew up in Black Africa. We're growing up in Nigeria. The rest of the world, you can find that there's some evolution as regards the place of a man and a woman when it comes to finances. You have your job, I have my job, you do this, I do this. So those things, I still think we're in a flux in Black Africa. We're still at its primitive stage where it is what our great-grandfather, our ancestors did and all. In my home, for instance, I pick up bills. My wife picks up bills as well. So we find out that it is a team effort. Yeah. When it comes to finance, it is a team effort. One might earn more, be a lot more, but it is still a team effort. But I say this to all women, and I don't know if it's going to end up one of the blogs someday, but I say it to all women and all. This old philosophy, I love a soft life. Every woman loves a soft life. Exactly. But I feel to a large extent that demand on a man is really overbearing. And we should come to a place of support, especially when you have a good man. Emphasis on good man, by the way.
Because we're not giving excuses.
We're not giving excuses for deadbeats who don't want to do anything. I just want to talk about when your man is working. Your man is out there. Your man is not giving up. Even from the little he has, he's a provider. Support.
You just said he's a provider.
Yeah, support. The little is provided you to support. When they say it's 10, add 2 to 8. So I think that for me is my own initial, concerning debts, men. But I know that there's more questions.
Yeah.
Your part asks more questions.
Okay, so we've just talked about the one question I asked you. Maybe I should run a thread. So there's been one consistent thing with all the questions that I've asked, which is self-discovery.
Yeah.
That even as the man, it's important for you to sit and just tell yourself the truth.
Yes.
Societal construct has nothing on you.
Yeah.
Especially if you marry right.
Yeah.
That's very important.
Yeah.
So we've answered the question of debt. What we're left with the question of possibilities. How does a man engineer himself to see possibilities? Because you explain it so well, how you can be so clouded with, I have to do this, this thing's in front of me, it has to get done. And then the wife comes, probably doesn't know what's in his mind, and says, we need this, or you need to get it. How does it shift all the needs and the overwhelm and begin to craft possibilities?
Well, okay, so I know we have a program that's been planned for next year that speaks to the wealthy individual, and it's a reconstruction process. So what we're trying to do is we find a lot of people, like you use the word, have been broken up to pieces, and we're trying to place back a lot of these elements, because one of the drawbacks of finances is that when it's not going accordingly, it tends to have a spiral effect on other key areas of an individual's life. Your health, your relationship, it affects everything else. So one of the ways to do this for me is to take a step back. A very popular man of God once told me that when you find yourself driving a car and you're confused about life, stop driving. Put your car in neutral. I would never forget that. I'm sitting in his office there, and he says to me, young man, every time you find yourself in a place where you are confused, you are trying to make sense of life, like when you're driving a car, just put it in neutral. He said, because the more you drive, the more you're probably going to be going down the wrong way. So it's better for you to stay still and now decide, do I need to turn around or do I need to start going? See, the human mind, the way God created it, He created it in such a way that it has a God-given ability to reshape and recreate reality, as it were. It is one of the things that God so lavishly gave human beings that He didn't give animals. I have a pet dog running around in my compound. It's a dog.
That's all it can be.
That's all it can be, a dog. But the human mind has given such a very powerful option that we'd have. I know we have audiences that will be watching this of different faiths, different backgrounds, but hear me and stay with me. If you remember the story of the prodigal child, you remember that one of the stories that really made it stand out was he was a privileged young boy, took the wealth, took the money, went out, lavished it on women, strange living, and all. But the Bible says something. It says he came to himself. The Bible, he had no preacher. He had nobody come to tell him, what you're doing is bad. He sat down and on his own, in that meditative state, realized that no, my life can be better than this. He said, if I go up to my father's house, even the slaves are even doing better than this. That alone shows you a realm of possibilities. That alone shows you that clearly, if a man comes to himself and decides he wants to come to himself, he can recreate realities and open up possibilities to himself. The possibilities exist. Oh, sure they do. But one of the things that debts and some of these very evil things draw you back is that they close the doors of possibilities. They close the doors of possibilities. One of my creditors said something. It's so amazing how you learn from everybody, even people you're owing. So I remember calling him up, asking for a loan one day, and he says to me, Chris, do you realize that the same energy that you're using to hound me for this money, the same energy you can use to get money? Ha! He still gave me the money, Sha. But it kind of set something in motion in my mind to say, the same 20 minutes I'm on the phone, cajoling, begging, please give me this, I'll pay you back then. It's the same that I can look for prospect and say, you know what, I can offer you this. Let me offer you this. Please allow me offer. And it is with respect. You will walk out of that conversation with dignity intact. As against, please give me the 100,000. Now, I don't want to also be unbalanced. The vicissitudes of life can be visited on any man. Yeah. Ask Job. It can really be visited on any life. And you find yourself in a space that you didn't plan for, you didn't save for, you are forced to do it. And that's different. And I honor and respect and pray for anybody that ever finds themselves in that state, where all of a sudden life doesn't make sense to you. I've been in positions where you've been pushed to the wall, and you just have to ask anybody and anybody just to get by what needs to be done, especially when you notice that it's health related, which is probably top on the list. You would throw away dignity into the gutter when you have a loved one who's dying, or you throw away dignity in the gutter when you have your child who's unable to take medication. So I respect another part. But on the other flip side, when it is a case of trying to scale up your financial standing, possibilities exist. So my challenge to myself, because I have discovered that nobody ever gets to the final destination. They only get to the destination when the casket is closed. But for all men, let us start a journey. It's a journey of reconstruction. It's a journey of reinvention. It's a journey of searching and answering questions. It's a journey of identifying those who will travel with us and those who won't travel with us. It's a journey of unbundling some of the habits that we've picked up, whether knowingly or unknowingly, or society has forced on us. School systems are forced on us. Uncles, aunties, teachers are forced on us. It's a state of realizing that it is only a man who has become that can actually attain possibilities. I was on a Zoom call speaking to one of the cohorts in my class, and I told them that if you've ever tried to feed a cat, you find out that every time you chase it, you're trying to cat, yeah, kitty, 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 the cat runs the opposite direction. But every time you welcome a cat with fish, you find out that the cat is attracted to come close to you to eat. What? Because many things that we are chasing were never meant to be chased. We're meant to attract them. So men need to start a journey of reinvention, because those possibilities can only be attracted to some certain kind of men. Men who have been forged through fire, who have knocked off some habits, some characteristics. Men who have decided upon themselves to say, I shall not sink, I shall only float. Men who have decided to say, I will be a man indeed, and in words. Men who have decided to themselves to say, you know what, the past is the past. I have made errors. I can reinvent and go forward to the future. That's when possibilities are exposed. Rumi, the Islamic poet, said something along the lines of, it is when a man comes to himself that the way tends to open. It's when you've come to yourself. You're blinded by it. The scales are over your eyes. You can see it. But the day you come to yourself, possibilities, the windows open. Because why? The world, as you call it, nature, as you call it, whatever description based on your religious leaning you want to give, they would only respond to men who have become. They will only respond. Possibilities would only. So oftentimes when we compare ourselves to other men, oh, my friend is doing better. Why is this person this? It's not a function of life being unfair. Sometimes the question you need to ask yourself is the becoming. Who have you become? Because for every no you get, somebody is out there getting yeses. For every time somebody tells you, I can't pay your service, somebody is paying 10 times to somebody else. The question is why? It's the becoming.
I think that you're alluding to the prodigal son. I even have a different theology. I feel like we shouldn't call him the prodigal son.
Nice.
Yeah. Because he's the son who knew that he had an inheritance. He was bold enough to ask for it. Just one mistake and everybody's paying for it. You know. But you said something that I want us to touch on about how he came to himself and then he thought, the servants in my father's house, there was a frame of reference. There's something he has seen, you know, and I think that also helped him to say, this is all right. The people that are not even up to me, they are not like this. Men tend to live in silence. And I want you to speak to the importance of building community as a man. And that would mean if it has to be even just one person. I want you to speak to it.
I think it's, let me first start with the prodigal example, move on to the men and communities. Yesterday I was speaking to a very wonderful man of God, and he just got back from Monaco, and he was telling me how Monaco shifted his frames of references. So when he thinks of wealth, he's going to stop thinking about all these people driving around the whole of Lagos, thinking that because Monaco is known as the playground of billionaires. He says you walk into a store. I say he saw a lady there, and somebody asked the lady, and the lady said the handbag was $250,000. He said he did a math on his church branch that if he sells the handbag, he can build a whole branch, buy Costa Boss. He can do it. He said he saw some Ferraris, maybe one grandfather in his 60s with a sweater. You know, just thinking to himself, frames of references are important. And a man cannot conceive to be anything that he has never seen before in his mind's eye. It's not possible. The way God created us is that it's frames of references that make us aspire. So if I say I want to be the best footballer in the world, I probably would have a frame of reference of Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi. If I have never seen the two of them play, the possibility is I will never even say I want to be a footballer.
It will be an impossible.
It will be an impossible feat. So it's important as human beings that we all have very good frames of references that we expose ourselves to that challenge us to be better. Now, going on to communities, it is very important that you have a support base, whether as a leader, in every form you find yourself, because those individuals are what that keep you grounded. So, for instance, I give you an example. We're launching the 5 books in the next a few weeks after this video, and one of the individuals that is meant to speak is a long-term friend. I had to beg him and tell him that as you climb and mount this stage, respect yourself and the friendship we have had over the years. It is extremely important that you behave. And he asked me a question, oh, so you want me to go up and lie? I said, no, I just want you to go up there and not talk.
Who are you?
Don't talk. Just go up there and nod and maybe get off. Why am I saying this? Is because a man who surrounds himself with individuals that can always speak truth to authority and power. This friend I'm speaking to is extremely well known, has climbed up to the apex of the legal profession in this country, and he's still my friend. And I mean, a few months ago, I'm driving my kid to school, and he's driving on the street. He moves around in the way most elites move around, and I'm in my car, and they try to push me off the road. I pick up my phone and I call this dear friend to say, you whoa, you better tell your, why? Because, I mean, that is funny, but what is important there is that it's always good to surround yourself with people who can speak truth to you, who can be stabilizing anchors, who can be there for you. Sometimes it might not even be that they have money to give you. It might just be a support of, guy, don't give up. Guy, don't give up. Look at where we're coming from. Look at where we're going. You cannot give up. It can be a friend. It can be a friend who would be that one person that even when the rest of the world has locked you out, even if your wife kicks you out, you can sleep on his couch. Everybody needs one person in their life, or even multiple. Just be discerning on who you expose yourself up to that, because it's a very vulnerable state to be in. But men definitely need communities. And that's one of the reasons why, even the Wealthy Man platform I'm speaking about, we're trying to create that kind of community and environment where you can be free. I've often said, as much as we love the cameras, that most of those sessions will probably not be recorded. So that you can cry if you want to. You can speak about anybody and everybody, and nobody's going to judge you afterwards. I think men need that space. There's a scarcity of that. And we hope that with that initiative would help a lot of people come out of their shell and find like-minded individuals who say, you know what, I've come to the end of myself. I don't know more than this. I need to get better. My marriage is on the rocks. My kids are asking if I'm daddy or father. There's a difference. It becomes tricky when your kids start asking if you are daddy or father. Yeah. Daddy tells you things that flow. When they call you father,
maintain. Come back to your
position. Come back. You're not doing something. So we were trying to create that kind of community. It's our own little way to encourage people where I get to speak with them, get to learn from them as well, and where we can bring people who can help them balance out and see possibilities. So along the lines of finance, along the lines of relationship, for those that are married, even along the lines of sex.
Yeah.
There's an amazing woman who I follow on YouTube and now who speaks truth to sex. A lot of men will not want to watch her videos. Because why? Because a lot of things she's saying, it's deep. We believe to ourselves that we have it all figured out. And yet, this is a woman speaking from the female perspective, saying, nah, dude, you ain't just started. And you're like, what?
You don't.
I've been married for how many years? Like, you don't. So when we bring those kind of people, we believe that we can now build an holistic man who can go out to the world and be who he has been all called to be.
Awesome. Which takes me to my next question. I was going to ask you, what kind of man do we need in 2050?
2050, if Jesus Christ tarries. Okay, I think a man that really knows his purpose. My dear, wonderful friend, Dr. Akundayo in New Zealand, Auckland, was on my conversations with CEOs speaking. So he's called he has a phrase which is described purpose preacher. And he's one of the people that really, really challenged me along the lines of understanding the importance of, because when you do not understand purpose, there'll be so much abuse, which I think is the fundamental reason why a lot of people are not fulfilling their God-given mandates on the earth. A lot of men are struggling because you don't even know why you're here to start with. You don't even know the construct that was behind the thinking, the ageless technology that created you, understood something, invested something in you. And when you don't understand it, you will abuse it. When you don't understand it, you will make a mess of it. It is the day you understand the reasoning behind it that you start to now walk in that. Then as you walk along, like the pilgrim that we all are on this earth, I think for me, a man who's close to his creator, who understands not just why he's here, who understands the reasoning behind it, understands his role in the grand scheme of this grand chessboard that we call the earth. Once a man understands all of this, it starts working gradually, starts working. And for me, it's a case of every step you go, you learn something new. Every step you go, you learn something new. A man in 2050 will definitely be a man that loves God unconditionally, understands I call it the triangular pyramid of love, which is God first, family, everything else. A lot of men, we have it kind of wrapped up. Even those that are in kingdom, we have it wrapped up. God, I would like to frame him this way. He's a jealous God. And he doesn't hide his jealousy. He wants to be at the top and will not share that space with anybody. You were created for his own benefit and pleasure. Understand that and you'll be good. But a lot of men, we tend to put a lot of things, money, cars, family, sometimes even honest, genuine things like love. When you look at the story of Abraham in the Bible, you find out that one of the reasons why that test was because Abraham was doting over that dude, man. This is his son, the promise. So let's try. And we're lucky enough that he passed the test. But many of us in 2050 can pass the test, can really pass the test to actually put God at the apex of our relationships and now understand that the next thing that he desires to see work out is the family unit, because the family unit is the most basic and the smallest unit of wider society. And once that is faulty, the entire society is faulty, then everything else follows. So a kind of man that understands the pyramid of it. Then a man who's ready to leave a lasting legacy. A man who clearly understands that his time on earth is finite. It is something that Solomon calls it just a vapor. So clearly, when you understand that your life is a vapor, you run such a race that people would almost think that you know your death date. But not necessarily. You understand that you will walk while it is still day, because there's a time that is coming that is night when no man can work. And that's when your eyelids close. So a man in 2050 is a man who understands that I don't know how long I'm going to be here. Whether God gives me 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, or even 100. When I'm signing out that register, I'm going to do it with juices, knowing that I did my best.
Awesome. What I hear you say is a man that is conscious of his power.
Yeah.
As crafted by God. That's the kind of man that we're looking forward to in 2050. Okay, so you have two beautiful boys.
Ah, yes, I do. The men.
Yeah. When they're on their first global stage, how would you like them to describe you?
Ouch. I wish I got this question yesterday. I would have reflected, I would have prayed, I would have meditated, I would have asked questions. I think I would generally want them to speak to a father who is present in their lives through all seasons. Not necessarily the perfect ones, the memorable ones as well, the not too memorable ones, because the mind of a child is such that the construct is made up of different memories. And as a parent, you want to be remembered in each of those seasons, not just a father that took me on holidays, a father that bought me everything I need, but a father that also equally fell into the puddle with me, a father that went swimming with me, a father who attended the party with me, a father who taught me how to drive, a father who I told about my first girlfriend about, probably a father who even baptized me, which is part of prayers that I have as well, baptize my own kids. So I think for me, all of that together would be the way I would pray that my kids, they don't say nasty stuff.
Okay, so one word for men who are married to strong women.
Lucky guys.
Ah.
There are different ways in which one can interpret that, but when you're married to a strong woman, I would always say that it is best for you to be grateful for everybody comes with the pluses and the minuses. Yeah. There's never going to be any individual who's going to give you all pluses. So with strength, sometimes some men do not have what it takes to control and appreciate and honor the strength that their women have. But generally, having a strong woman is a major advantage. I remember a story, I don't know how authentic it is. I probably presume that it is one of the numerous internet stories. But for me, I always say that even those stories, even if they're not real, you can learn something. And it's a story about Michelle and Barack going out to dinner and bumping into somebody, Michelle introducing Barack to the gentleman and says, meet my ex, this. And on their way out, Barack says to Michelle and says, see, you're lucky that you married me because now you'd have been married to and Michelle correcting him and said, no, he would have been the president of the United States and not you.
Oh, yeah.
So that goes to show you the strength of a woman who clearly can hold the hands of a man and say, you know what, even when the winds are blowing, you can be sure that when everything else, I'm going to be here with you. A woman who would be able to fight some certain battles. You know, for good reason, demonized her in scripture because obviously she didn't represent anything good. Jezebel. But she was a damn strong woman. Ahab will go up crying in his room and she acts like the man.
You won the field.
You say you won the field, you have the field, you know. So, I don't celebrate anything she represents.
Yeah.
But it only goes to show you the strength of a strong woman.
So we can use Abigail then.
We can use Abigail, for instance. If Abigail is even the perfect example. Yeah. And for those who don't know the story, David and his men are on the run from Saul, and out in the field, they're taking over a man's sheep and cows and the rest. And eventually they send word to the man, say, can you tell your master to please give us some food and some supplies? And they tell the master, and the master says to them, who the hell is your master David? I don't know him from Adam. Foolish man. And the next thing, David gets really angry, mounts his horse, he's going to slaughter every male in his house. And a servant runs back to tell Abigail to say, you know what? David is on his way, everybody's going to, and she gathers raisins, gathers fruits, gathers everything, meets David on the way, bows before him and gives him all the honor and says, please forgive my husband because even his name means foolish.
Yeah.
And there and then, a strong woman, she saved the entire household. And to show you further wisdom behind her strength, she doesn't tell her husband immediately. She waits till the next day, he's drunk, stupor, and she says to him, look at you. You would have died yesterday. And the Bible says he fell down, had a stroke. A few days later, he was died. So I think David was very attracted to strong women. So strong women definitely do play a role. Yeah. So men that have them are lucky.
Yeah. So to the strong woman, what would you want her to know about the man?
Know that we can be teddy bears sometimes inside, despite my, that inside of me, I'm kind of fluffy sometimes. And you should also just sometimes calm down the strength. We also want to know that we're with a woman,
Yeah.
We also want to know that we're a woman. Sometimes the strength can exude, it can portray so much that it can beat down your feminine features, even though they may be existing.
Yeah.
Because it's all in the mind. Yeah. A man wants to know that he's with a woman.
Not another man.
Not another man. So that would be it.
And that's a really big deal. Yeah. And I learned it from my husband too. So it's
good. Because a lot of men are in that state where they feel that they're sleeping with a man. Not me, by the way. No, not me.
No, not him. Please. But it's a real thing.
Yeah, it's a real thing. It's a real thing. I'm speaking from experience in talking to people and conversations. A lot of people get so overwhelmed where the woman doesn't understand that. I think it was Merkel, the former German chancellor, strong woman, but everyone speaks to her strength as such that when she's home, she knows who her husband is.
Yes.
And that's what a lot of women who have ascended to heights of such authority and power, you find out that they understand this. She was German chancellor, but she will leave that at the doorstep.
She's a wife.
She's a wife.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's very important.
Yeah, awesome. What are our eyes?
What?
What's our eyes?
What are our eyes? Eyes.
Lion or dove?
Lion.
Always lion.
Lion.
Oh, thank you. It's been such an amazing time. I hope you feel relaxed now.
I am relaxed. You didn't want to share the questions, but I had fun.
Thank you for sharing your heart and just helping the world to navigate the possibilities that are available in living a powerful life. So once again, he has 5 books, We're launching 5 books on
5 books.
October 19th.
It is Leadership Gems of the Bible from the Old Testament, Leadership Gems of the Bible from the New Testament. It is So You Want to Lead. It is also the irrefutable role of gatekeepers, and you too can be debt-free. Yeah.
And all of that information concerning how you can get the book will be on the website at tcocglobal.com as well as the Chris Omonjade or ChristopherOmonjade.com. Thank you for learning with us. God bless you.